points of access out. It doesn't go through any other subdivision.
Any other questions? I will not take this off your time, so I'll give him his own 5 minutes. Okay, is there any other questions for this gentleman?
All right,
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Smith and Commission. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm Tom Scott. I'm the applicant. So I'll address a few things here.
Tell us your address.
Oh, sorry, 130 Southwest 2nd Avenue, Canby. First, I'll address the Larch Street connection. As we originally proposed, we proposed the connection without 13th Place connecting to the Tofty property on the west. And we did that because we thought that was the best way to flow traffic out of this area of town. The traffic study came back. It opposed that connection. We thought that wasn't a fight we were going to die on. Traffic would still work. We thought the neighborhood association would not like that, and we told them that we're really fine with either way. So we would go any direction that you guys recommend on that and be fine with that. The only thing I would say, and I think Pat just addressed that, is this corner lot is kind of a different zoning, and not sure really how that's going to develop. It sounds like more likely that that's going to be more of a commercial type development rather than a straight residential. And typically what you would see in that is their own access, egress and ingress. So they would have more of a driveway. And they might need to be creative with those driveways with how close they are to that intersection, but I would argue that we have quite a few of those in town that are probably much worse than this, so it can be done. So if Larch Street goes through, we would like to go back to our original proposal and take away that 13th extension, 13th place extension to the west there, to the Tofty property. And eventually, if that needs to be served, it'll be served from the roads coming from the south. The Sassy property, Scott property, and McRoby property, the 13th and 14th, or excuse me, 14th and 15th will extend to the north and catch that if it develops into residential.
So you guys would be opposed to having both Lupine and Larch connect to 13th?
It seems odd, and what it does, you lose one residential lot out of it if you do both. And it seems like we have too much connectivity going to all those parcels. And I would say if it's specific, it's going to be commercial. It seems odd that a commercial property would exit through a residential subdivision with the truck traffic and things like that will occur on a regular basis. Any other questions for me on the Larch Street connection? The other one I want to address is the 13th Avenue road section. So we're proposing the pavement width as suggested and the 6-foot sidewalk, and then the planter strip was kind of the question mark. So we're fine with expanding that planter strip to 4.5 feet, whatever Angie and Brian would like or recommend, or whichever you guys would recommend us doing. I think 4.5 feet's fine. That's what we do inside the subdivision, and it's fine for tree width for the planter. And we'll go ahead and do an easement for that planter strip and for the masonry wall. So if you guys would like us to do that, we'd be happy to do that. And that would match. Currently, Tofty Farms to the east is, I measured it today, it's about 4 feet. So we could make a quick connection there on that corner and extend it. The pathway, walkway, 12-foot walkway there to 13th Avenue, the fence thing seems weird to me. I hadn't read that code until I noticed it in the report today, so I talked to Angie about that. And I do understand wanting to have, more eyes on those areas. However, the privacy for those lot owners in those backyards seems weird to have a 4-foot fence. There's really no privacy for them. And so having potentially quite a few people walking by on a daily basis seems odd. So I'd propose having a taller fence, maybe 5 feet. We could, I wouldn't be opposed to extending our masonry fence is going to be 5 foot high out on 13th. I'd be okay with extending that masonry fence down that walkway, maybe 70 or 75 feet, and then stopping it 30 or 35 feet short of Southeast 13th Place, and then that would shorten that alleyway up so it wouldn't feel so long and narrow, which may get more eyes and more light into that pathway. Of course, we would ask Canby Utility to design the lighting to get some light, both from 13th Avenue and Southeast 13th Place into that walkway, which would help. We would like to not put bollard lighting in there. It's hard to maintain for a homeowner association. It's extremely expensive for them to maintain because of the having to put an electrical meter. Electrical meter is going to be expensive, and then it's going to be a constant. Where do you put the thing, and how do you hide it? How do you keep people from destroying that meter that's sitting out in the middle of nowhere? And then, of course, there's quite a bit of cost for a couple small bollard lights. So I think we could light that area up pretty good with some regular street lighting. I think that's it. There's a couple conditions. I think that, Angie, you're going to address condition 26 on the grading.
Why don't you address them now, because there's only
Okay.
time for public input.
Okay,
If
so
you've
there's
got comments
one
on
condition, we just talked about condition number 36, which is the pathway fencing, which I would propose to be 5 or 6 feet. If it's masonry, we can go 5 feet and match the 13th Avenue. And item number 26, condition number 26, talks about grading the lots to within, I believe it says 1 foot of final foundation grade, I believe. And that's difficult to do, and I'm not sure that's practical. It potentially could cause us to have a large expense of hauling in dirt to grade these out to that scenario. So I talked to Angie about it. I understand why they might have put that in there, because different builders may grade their homes at different heights. Typically, we see a 12 to 18-inch foundation height above curb, and so that's what we would propose in this subdivision. This is a fairly flat area, and there's not much grade difference either direction, so I don't imagine we're going to have any issues as far as grading on this one. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Do you have any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other proponents? Come on up, ma'am, please. Well, you've got 3 categories. You can either be a proponent, an opponent, or a neutral. So you're going to need to pick one.
So if we're pro with talking about the large,
If you want this thing to be approved in some form or fashion, then you should speak during proponents. If you really don't care, then you be neutral. If you don't want it to be approved in some form or fashion, then go in an opponent. It'd be the best way to organize it.
and you're taking pro.
Sure, right now,
I'm
proponent.
Susan Myers, 372 Southeast 13th Place, Canby. I represent the Tofty Farms Homeowners Association. I am a board member. And we did submit a lengthy letter to you today, which hopefully you had time to review. I would like to hit on some of the high points of it. We do appreciate the Scots building Dinsmore Estates 1. They do quality building. We're happy that they will be developing Phase 2. The issue we do have is we really object to not having the large connection to 13th. And because the traffic study and everything, you're looking at one piece, you're not considering the undeveloped property and how that will be served. In the applicant's application, on pages 5 and 7, they talk about how the city formula for access points per residential units, that with the 4 access points that we have, which would be, and I'm not sure how to use this, 16th, down here, Lupine here, Pinus here, and Ponderosa is clear over here. So in this total area, with those 4 access points, there would be 288 homes allowed within that total area served by those 4 access points. And so of the 288, 213 are taken between the 4 phases of Tofty Farms and Dinsmore Estate 1. That leaves 75 more residential units that can be served for Dinsmore Estate 2 and all these, unless you have another access point. And the problem is that this is a county road, and their requirements are 1,000 feet, I believe, per staff was looking at this on Friday. So 1,000 feet separating the streets along here. And there really is not a firm plan on where that access point is. We know that this is going to be coming in soon for development by the Netters. We know that there's current interest in this pad, which can be upgraded to R2 for senior housing, which would be senior apartments, which is what it's sounding like it's likely to be. Per the, ITE manual, those, each senior housing unit would have 3.44 trips per unit. Because it's 2.76 acres, they could have 61 senior housing units, basically be an apartment building if they maximized it. And they would, if that is truly what happens here, that would be 210 trips being generated from this. They could have a driveway 330 feet along here. It would put it right about here, which is almost in alignment with the turn cues for the intersection. So the traffic study did not look at this plan where this connects. So when the traffic study is saying it's fine for these 41 homes to use this as a main access point, it did not consider that these possibly 210 trips would also be coming this way. And in our opinion, what the traffic study also didn't look at is the fact that our neighborhood here, most of the pedestrians, traffic comes this way to cross at the hump here for the children going to school, because we have no bus service in any of this area. Dinsmore Estates 1 and 2 will not have bus service. So the children are walking to Lee School up here, and the sports fields here, and the moms with small children are going to Legacy Park, which is over here, and the safest spot to cross is at this raised pedestrian crossing. So when you're coming out of Lupine, there is a kind of hard to observe, but when you're in your car, you actually feel it. There's a little bit of a southern slope. So when you stop before the crosswalk, you can't see because the traffic coming from the west along here, because the brick wall is in the way. And this topography does not, this problem, sightline topography issue, does not exist at Pine Street that's over here and Ponderosa. The wall's not in the way. But here, for those of us that drive it every day, you stop before the crosswalk, you make sure there's no pedestrians, and you slowly creep out to see if cars are coming. Then you're dealing with the raised crosswalk, which is right here, which, as I said, that is a primary spot for pedestrian traffic. And then there's a driveway directly across the street. The driveway's not the biggest issue, but when you're taking everything into account, you're looking at traffic coming this way, our kids crossing there, I'm in a crosswalk, it's kind of a lot. This all is a little bit of a challenge that the other two access points for Tofty Farms, it's just not an issue at those. So with Sequoia's extension, there will be more traffic on 13th. The traffic study did consider that. They didn't think that Lupine was a problem. But for those of us that use it, it's a challenge. And now we're talking about putting 390, when you count the 41 housing units are in here. The traffic study studied 39 units, not 41. And if I need to buy time, I have 2 other people willing to give up their
Yeah, you probably do need to get some
time.
more time here, I was going to
And
mention it.
there's paperwork submitted, and at the bottom it says they would give my time.
Okay,
Do you need
I've
that
got your little
person?
thing here, so-
So that'd be
Okay,
Chris
go
Journal.
ahead.
Okay, so Now I've lost track. So Lupine is challenged in the topography and the layout. And to have, this would have 390 trips. The traffic study says 271, but that was based on 39 housing units, not the 41 that is in the application. And it didn't consider, as staff said, the big hole of what's the impact of this and how do we get another access point?
Let me ask you a question while we're on this. Now, is it the homeowners association position that that you want there to not be a connection to Let me get my...
We would be happy
That there
with-
would not be a connection on Lupine here? This would be somehow blocked off?
We don't mind if some goes through there, but if Larch is there, it just doesn't funnel everything to here.
Okay, so...
And living here, most homes, like maybe these might go this way, but what we experience in here is almost everyone from here up goes through Lupine.
So you're essentially suggesting that the traffic would then be split. So half of it might use this and half
And
of it
half
might
might
use that. So it's
And we don't need to have this connection here, we're fine if that goes away. So if you go back to the original plan, we're cool, we would love that. The one that includes Larch and that doesn't connect 13th to this. But if you choose to connect this to 13th Place to this pad, we need the Larch connection here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, when I read your letter earlier today, I thought you were wanting to have two accesses here. I asked Mr. Scott about that, and he indicated that their plan was only to have one, either here or here, but they didn't really want both.
I think maybe he misunderstood your question. I think he doesn't object to Lupine being used, that connection can be made, as well as the Larch connection as was shown in the original plan. Is that
Okay, we'll have a rebuttal, so
Okay.
continue on.
So if the developer wants the original plan, that's fine. If you decide you want to put this connection through to here, then we need the Larch connection. The traffic study never considered this connection here and what that meant. The other thing is, further down east on 13th Avenue, there's more land being annexed into the city. It will have two roads that do not meet the 660-foot requirement. They're being grandfathered in because they were shown in the TSP. Our position is this should also be allowed as an exception because the 660 feet, we believe, wasn't in place when Tofty Farms was built, and there was no master planning in here. So while this doesn't technically qualify as infill in a way, they're stuck dealing with the roadway here, the distances, and we need to find a way to make it work so that these can develop when they want to. You don't want to not allow this guy to develop or this guy to develop because you need these guys to develop to get this access point. So, for tonight, we're fine with the original plan, but it seems as though the city should be looking at the whole picture for this because of the issues with the access points and how you're going to serve everybody. But, we don't want to hold them up. We're fine with the original street layout, but this, by removing Larch, that really creates, and connecting 13th here, creates significant concerns. Also, if you allow Larch to connect, then the pedestrian issues go away. The pedestrian pathway issues go away also. And just as far as the street grid, this actually is not bad because it slows traffic down because in these areas, there's not that much yard, so the kids oftentimes are in the front yard. So if you have a straight shot, people tend to speed like we see on Maple and Pepperwood and Ponderosa, but when they kind of have to jog around a little bit, it kind of brings down the speed. So that's not necessarily a bad thing for within a neighborhood.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other proponents that would like to speak tonight? Not seeing any other proponents, we will move to opponents. We We have, let's see, we have a Mr. Kevin Anderson.
He left.
Oh, he's the one, okay. We have a Mr. Jason
That's
sorry,
supposed to be pro. That's supposed to be pro, so
And-
put market pro.
okay. Well, then you need to speak up when it's time for pro. Do you want to speak on the pros?
Sorry, for the-
You're the one that gave her, okay. Perfect, that works fine, thank you. And then there was another one for Susan Myers. You bought a lot of time, that's good work. Okay, so is there any con speakers? Nobody is speaking con. Is there anybody that's neutral that just wants to talk about that? Okay, if there's not any other pro or con, we'll go to the rebuttal, and then after the rebuttal, it'll be closed. So I'm not seeing anybody rising. The applicants, you have your rebuttal time. And if you can, please address that, whether it's my misunderstanding or Mr. Scott's misunderstanding about my earlier question about whether you guys would be willing to have both Larch and Lupine go through or not.
Don't know if they have this on or not. Yes, good evening again, Pat Sissel with Sissel Engineering. Yes, Mr. Scott is fine with this connection, the Larch connection, and the Lupine connection, both.
Having two, okay.
Yeah. I also wanted to throw out that, yes, that we proposed this connection here. Again, we didn't know, we had no idea what might get proposed here, but we wanted to provide a good access to here. I do want to throw out, if this is a problem, if you think that having this public street come here, we'd be fine with doing some type of a knuckled intersection here with a driveway, just a driveway that would serve lots 1 or 1 and 2, something like that would be fine as well. We were trying to provide connectivity, but weren't necessarily trying to create a problem. And if you feel that this is a problem, having a public street stubbing into this property, then we can get a little more creative with what this would look like here and come up with a driveway that I think would be acceptable. Again, the issue here as far as the intersection, the Larch Street intersection, is that code requires 660 feet. And I'm not sure how long that has been in the code. I don't think it's been in the code very long. I got on Google Earth today and I looked at some of the other arterials in Canby, and just so you know, the arterials that are listed in the TSP, or the streets that are listed in the TSP as arterials, include 99E, North Grant Street, Ivy Street, all of South Ivy, and then the portion of North Ivy between 99E and 6th Avenue on the north, and then Southwest and Southeast 13th Avenue. Those are the arterials. I looked on, and Knightsbridge Road is the other one. On Knightsbridge Road, Cedar Court to Cedar Street, 230 feet of intersection separation. From Cedar Street to Birch, 200 feet. From Birch to Aspen, 310. From Aspen to Ash, 405. On Grant Street, from 6th to 5th, 335. From 5th to 4th, 325. From 4th to 3rd, 335. From 3rd to 2nd, 330. From 2nd to 1st, 270. I can go on down the list. Every arterial, even 99E, from Ivy to Juniper, 370 feet. From Juniper to Knott, 360. And from Knott to Locust, 413. I can tell you that there's intersections on the arterials all over Canby that don't meet the 660 feet. I don't know if that'll make a difference to you or not, but I wanted to let you know that this wouldn't be an isolated situation, and including other streets farther out on 13th in this area, from Pine Street to Ponderosa, that's 425 feet intersection to intersection. From Ponderosa to Redwood, 405 feet. So it's it doesn't meet standard. There's a lot of intersections that don't meet standards, including some right in this area. So I wanted to make you aware of that. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have.
One other
for
question I
us.
have, some of our conditions apply to the homeowners association and the homeowners association managing or being responsible for some things. The plan does call for, and you guys' plan has for sure a homeowners association as a part of it?
There is a homeowners association for Dinsmore Phase
Okay.
1 already, and the
Okay.
plan was to have Phase 2 and Phase 1 in a combined homeowners association.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant? Final rebuttal? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay. The public hearing portion of this application is, the public input portion of this, is still a public hearing, is then closed. We would move to commission questions of staff. If there's no questions of staff, then we'll go into deliberation. Any questions of,
I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
volunteer 2 pieces of additional information. One is the corner property. The latest communications with the people that are thinking of developing it is a single building that would contain 41 memory care beds, basically. And so whether that is considered residential or commercial, I guess, so that property would house one single building that would have 41 units in it.
I would suggest that we think about the entire universe of things that could be there, because that's sort of our job as a plan. You know, we don't know
Right.
if
It's
anything,
not an
somebody that came in
application.
today is going to be the end product there, so, I mean, it's good to know that as far as information, but I'm not entirely sure we should plan, you know, any decision based on the assumption that it'll be a particular type of development, you know, in the corner lot. That's not what's in the record today. It wouldn't really be, you know, a real good fact for us to base any kind of decision.
The other thing that I wanted to share is that staff's only real opinion related to the Larch Street connection and such is kind of related to development of that corner lot along 13th, is that we know that the only place that they'll be allowed to have a driveway is towards the very eastern edge of that property. And so we think it would be better that we didn't have that property with that driveway and the Larch Street, both of those going out. And it's possible we may end up with both, but that would be our preference, that we didn't see both. But we don't know of any way that we can condition, if we were to put Larch in, that they couldn't then have their driveway if it met code. So I'm just kind of pointing that out. You know, this is a very kind of difficult situation here.
Across the street, they've got, what, 4 driveways in 30 feet?
Yeah, exactly. But that's what the traffic engineers look at, is trying to reduce conflict points at a very busy intersection. And what they're thinking of is down the road, this will be considerably more busy than it is today. And it'll be really hard for those people at that driveway, or potentially Larch, to maybe get out with a full-service street or driveway at that location. That's the thought in having the separation.
And I did, one more thing, if I can add one more thing, I did look into more of the county standards. You know, we don't know for sure until something's proposed, but it looks like a driveway might be allowed 250 feet from an intersection. So the county probably would allow some sort of driveway there if they wanted to put a driveway along Ivy.
It's more roads that are strictly distanced, right?
Yeah, the 1,000-foot
The
separation.
1,000-foot is actually for arterial to arterial, so the way we're looking at the county and understanding it is arterial to local is actually 250, we think. So, county might not be an issue.
Okay. Let's see, any other questions for staff? Let's move to deliberation then. Anybody want to make some opening comments? Not I will. Don't ask me twice. So, I had questioned whether they did have the homeowners association, 'cause a lot of our conditions that they don't seem to have a problem with do relate to the homeowners association, they have that. I don't see that there's really any problem with planning for that street to stub in there, to leave flexibility for, whatever is going to happen in this world over here. I think that the local neighbors there crossed, Tofty, that area, have a valid point, and the applicant doesn't seem to have much objection to having the lupine go through. And with the distances we have on other streets, I think that should be, I guess, a condition, that they have a street there. It eliminates the lighting problem on the trail, and, solves some neighbors' legitimate concerns, and the applicant doesn't have any problem with those. I think that, let's see, some of the other questions I had, I think that the outdoor lighting is, their street lighting, as long as that conforms with the code under 1643-060, that's fine. On the residential, they're probably not going to have the other outdoor lighting, as staff had recommended on that one. As Angie had explained, I would think that the 34-foot, sounds like they meet that requirement. I had questions on that originally. The other questions that I had originally were all addressed. I don't think it's a problem to have double facing on that one on 13th Street, because it's pretty much uniform. That whole street pretty much has some single-facing houses. I was struggling some with how we would deal with the planting easements and the 2-foot, 4-foot stuff, but the applicant is apparently given on that and given up extra space, which will, be a hindrance on them, but they're giving on that, so I don't see any problem with us going with what they're giving and doing the extra 4 feet. So I didn't see any problem with that, and that pretty much, as far as I knew, met what staff had seen as concerns and conditions, is what I. Anybody else, comments, thoughts?
I like the connection at large. I don't think that we need to cap that off. I think that the pathway is more of a problem than it is a bonus for the neighborhood. They need the driveway there versus a bike path. Mr. Scott had an issue with on 26, I think it was, with the grade height, and I can't remember if it was 12 to 18 that he was talking about for that. I don't see, another 6 inches in grade in that property, I don't see as an issue. Plus, it's pretty flat as it is. I don't think there's any problem with that.
We might mention that staff's proposing to delete that requirement altogether.
Okay, that's great. Just take it out totally. From there, I really don't have any other issues. The lighting, I saw that too, that as long as it's with the code, I don't have a problem with it.
And I don't know how everybody's thoughts are, but Commissioner Savory, I don't know, my proposal is that we don't have the little trail at all, and that we have a lupine there, but speaking in defense of those little trails in generally, I think they are, a good benefit. Yes, there's a safety thing there. I use the ones on, farther away all the time when I have little kids, and those things are pretty handy. I think they're a real benefit to the community. It's my personal opinion, even though I don't think that we would have one here, but.
I'd go there. If the street is put through, would there be a pedestrian crossing to access for kids traveling back and forth between the school and the residential area? Because I guess there's one down in here from what I heard now.
Yep.
But if we're going to have children down here, they're going to take the shortest route, and if the street goes through, I would like to see some pedestrian precautions there.
It's something that could be looked at. My gut feeling is that it's way too close to an existing one into a lighted intersection, and so they need to go, once they get to the sidewalk, they need to go to one or the other that's there.
Kids gonna do
And
that.
they're very expensive to put in, and
Oh, I
so the
understand.
chance of doing another one this close to a stoplight or an existing one probably isn't going to happen.
we
Okay.
want to address there might be, I think Tofty has little pedestrian crossing markings going east and west. That might be something that we would want to match.
I don't know what the question is. It's a sidewalk.
There's
Oh,
like
you
a
mean
crossing
If
page.
the street goes out.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, okay.
there's treatments going east and west, connecting, indicating there's a crosswalk east and west at least on the adjacent properties.
Yeah, that could be good.
There's,
It's not very often you can make everybody happy, but this, adding Lupine in there seems like it would make pretty much everybody happy.
Excuse me, point of order, you keep saying lupine, I think you mean large.
Larch, sorry, larch.
Thank you.
John, you're supposed to whack me. You're the vice chair.
Okay, now that I have that clarification.
Okay, is there anybody making any motions? Or any other points of discussion?
Well, I'd just like to say that I too am in agreement that we should put large connecting to 13th. And the idea that there should be some safety crosswalk precautions taken for kids, I think is critical, because they don't care,
If there's a street there, they're gonna go.
they're gonna go across, you bet. So, yeah. So, I'm not quite sure where we,
Well, as chair, I don't make motions, but if there's not any other discussion, somebody should propose an action item to, either,
to,
approve, reject, whatever.
I will make a motion to approve the application with the proviso that large connects to 13th. And again, I don't know how you put it in there about the crosswalk requirements for children, but that would be, I don't know if that's part of
Granted,
this.
it's close together, but I still would really like to see something.
Yeah, I think probably the best thing for you to do with the crosswalk is to make it clear, and it's going to be clear in the minutes that you have a preference that be looked at and studied. You can't encumber money. Only the city council can do that, but you can sure make it known that you think that should be studied.
We could impose a sign, the putting up of a sign, I don't know if that would look very good, but you could certainly say there need to be some signage, children crossing or something. I would think that would be.
I guess I'm not going to make any comment on what you can or can't do, just to keep people safe.
Well, it's
Just
not like
because
that's
we're-
going to work necessarily.
Because we're adding a new street, and because there's many, many, many streets, and I can name 10,000 streets that don't then have a crosswalk going right straight across.
Well, that would be my proposal, is that we approve the proposal with the large street connecting to 13th, and with advising the city council to take up the issue of a crosswalk of some sort at that intersection.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion about Mr. Savory's motion? Mr. Hensley, you had a piece that
Yeah.
was not reflected in his.
There is the deletion of number 26 in the approval.
and we don't have final findings prepared tonight, so we'll get into all the nitty-gritty
And I-
next time, and we'll
think
delete,
that was-
we'll delete 26.
Okay. Is that it though?
Any discussion? All right. So we have a motion and a second. I'm not hearing any other discussion on that. All those in favor of approving Dinsmore Estates Phase 2 Subdivision 1402 with the exclusion of proposed condition of approval 26 and with the initial proposed plat map that shows Larch Street going through to 13th, and staff will work with the applicant to present to us final findings, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All were in favor?
Could I request one clarification?
Yes.
Could you show the design for the street going through? If we go back to that initial design, it doesn't have a stub street of any type to that corner lot, and we talked about that didn't necessarily oppose that. They would lose a lot in this design if they were to do that. They could put a private drive connection maybe over there, which would be less than a public street right-of-way. But it's just, I want you to be aware of your decision, that there won't be a stub to that lot. I'm not necessarily advocating for it, but
Well,
it does give more flexibility in the future.
okay, then, that's not exactly what we had been discussing. Because I think, at least in my comments, I had assumed that that stub was also on this design, because we had talked about
Right, because that's,
the flexibility of not knowing what's going to be on the corner. of
right,
anything.
right.
I want to see if the applicant has any response on that,
Yeah.
if you kind of think you'd like to see it.
Tom?
I think, yeah, well, hang on a second, I guess we can, does someone have a question for the applicant while we're in deliberation?
Yeah, how would that, now that we're talking about going, taking Larch straight through to 13th, how's that going to affect?
So we think this way cleans this up, and then these parcels will all be addressed through these connections. So 15th circle, go through like that, catch 14th, and then this will come through. And either stop here or connect, depending on what's necessary for that particular lot right there. So it could be caught with these streets coming through, and that could either stop and be a cul-de-sac, and this has its own access either here or here, depending on what kind of development happens, or these streets go all the way through and connect for that particular lot on the corner. And it gets away from having this major four-way intersection right next to 13th. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Tom.
Okay, so, let's think about how to do this procedurally. So let's go back to the discussion. If your vote's the same, then we'll have another vote. If there's anybody that affected their decision, we will just go back to the discussion.
I actually like this.
I'm okay with it. I mean, I think having the stub there for flexibility would probably be preferred in my brain, but I'm not, I don't think it's a deal breaker. I would vote no because of that.
That doesn't change my mind.
Doesn't change my mind either.
Okay, so what are we going to call this? This is the initial design model. Or design plat, I guess. Since it doesn't have a label on it. Okay, so all those in favor of approving the Dinsmore Estates Phase 2 Subdivision 1402 with the initial plat, the deletion of condition number 26, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All were in favor. Okay, next item of business today, that's the end of that public hearing. We have another public hearing. We have an applicant who's requesting approval of a planned unit development and subdivision, which will include 5 identical buildings with 3 homes, each on individually planned lots for a total of 15 townhomes, called the Emerald Gardens Townhomes Planned Unit Development 14-01 and subdivision 14-01. Let me collect my papers. And I'm going to reread the public hearing instructions. The matter that's before, and I'll read them in an abbreviated manner because nobody new has come in. So you probably heard the first instructions. The matter that's before this planning commission requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please be prepared to step forward to the microphone at the appropriate time. State your name, your address, and your interest in the matter. Please be sure to sign in on the testimony sheet if you've come in since we've started. For those people other than the applicants that are interested in testifying, you will have a chance when it's either the opponents or the neutral time or the proponents. You may buy time from another person that's in the audience that wishes to speak. In order to do so, signify by saying so when it's your time at the microphone. You will be limited by time for your presentation today. The applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be given 5 minutes each. The opponents will be given 5 minutes each, and those thought to be neutral on the matter will be given 5 minutes each. The applicant will then have 10 minutes for rebuttal. If we ask questions, that will not be subtracted from your time. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearings body for public access and to become part of the record. All written testimony received both for and against prior to the hearing shall be summarized by the staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable review criteria contained as indicated in the staff report, comprehensive plan, or the applicable land use regulations which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it's only to concur with previous testimony. Is there anyone on the planning commission that has a conflict of interest, real, actual, or potential? If so, please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from hearing on this matter.
There's no conflict.
Not seeing any conflicts. I have no conflicts. Is there any ex parte contact? Is there any member of the planning commission that has had ex parte contacts with anyone prior to this hearing about this matter, including a visit to the site? Please declare the nature and extent of such a contact at this time.
I've driven by and looked at it because I live close to it.
I drive by it all the time.
Okay,
I've driven by as well, but that's it.
all right. Does any member of the audience have any questions for any commissioner regarding conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts? Not seeing any, we'll move forward. Next, we will open the public hearing portion of this application. First, we will have the staff report, we'll have questions of the planning commission to the staff, then we will have testimony. First will be the applicant, then other proponents, then opponents, then neutral, and then the applicant will have a final rebuttal of not more than 10 minutes. We'll close public testimony. We will have planning commission discussion, questions for staff or for anyone else if we have it, and then we will have discussion and deliberation. Then we will make our decision. No testimony will normally be allowed after the close of the testimony portion of the meeting. Are there any questions about the procedures for tonight? Steph, who wants to give this one?
I'll go see how quickly we can get through this. I'm kind of excited about this development. I've worked with the developer, Jason Bristol, for quite some time on sorting through our code requirements to try to facilitate something that was unique and a little different. And so if you've studied this, I think you'll see several aspects that make it a little bit different. But this property that's being developed is 2 tax lots that had 2 existing homes. I believe that one of the homes recently actually burned down that fronted on 3rd Avenue, and then there's an existing home that's on 4th Avenue that will need a demolition permit for that house to be removed. And there, as you can see out near the fairgrounds, with the one-way street system with Northeast 3rd Avenue heading towards the fairgrounds and 4th Avenue away towards downtown, so you have that one-way loop system. And that is a designated truck route on the transportation plan because the south properties on Northeast 3rd have some industrial properties, and so they have some large trucks that circle around that area to get access. And important just to note that part. And I've just put the design up here. It's kind of small, it's a little difficult for you to see. But what this site plan shows you is that there's 5 different structures, and each of these structures holds 3 units. And so the 5 structures are shown right here on the site plan. And then the dark area is actually the private road that starts at 3rd and goes all the way through the site to 4th. And although the application wasn't clear to me, please tell me if I'm wrong, they can go either direction on that private road. Okay. And so that is a 2-way private road, but of course, when you head south, you can only go one way, and so there'll be signage that indicates one way as you're exiting, and signage up here on 4th will be needed indicating that only one way, which is towards town on Northeast 4th Avenue. This development is a planned unit development, and it is actually taking advantage of a couple flexibilities that the PUD ordinance allows. And one of those is basically the orientation of the lots. Instead of fronting on a public street, they're turned sideways. And so they're fronting on this private road, and that kind of by default becomes your rear yard that's on this private road, and the front, rather than fronting on a public street, is facing the adjacent interior properties. And that's where the biggest issue comes in as far as I'm concerned in review of this, and it has to do with what you might term the compatibility with the adjacent properties. There is a requirement in the PUD ordinance that you do the best you can to mitigate adverse impacts to adjacent properties. And so I think they've done a fairly good job of doing that. This kind of shows you what the units look like. And so this top elevation is a view from the private drive of the garage doors down below, 3 stories tall. And this elevation down here at the back where the driveway is shows you that it actually cantilevers over as it goes up to the second and third story. So I think there's 22 feet or something down here at the garage. By the time you get up to the top, there's something less. I don't remember what the dimension is now. But that's an interesting aspect of the development as well. But you still, I believe you still end up with the, at least on the second floor, the 20-foot that the fire department asked for emergency access through the site, as their need is to serve this. As I was saying, one of the things that I thought was important was that the perimeter be designed to mitigate conflicts with those adjoining properties. And when you're thinking of how it might impact, most of this area is currently developed with older, single-family detached homes. At some point, and it's been quite some time, I didn't try to find out how long it's been, but this area was rezoned to high-density residential. And it's important to note that there's not that many areas in town that have high-density residential, and so we need to give deference to the fact that they should be able to follow the allowed, not only follow, but are required to put in the required minimum density, which is 14 units per acre. And in order to achieve that, on a lot of this size, it pretty much relegated them to going to 3 stories tall in order to achieve the minimum density required. I believe they're just a little bit under that. The setbacks are one of the aspects that they've taken advantage of in the PUD that allows some flexibility. But if you look at where the flexibility has really been in the rear yards, where it's all internal to this development, if you look at the exterior boundaries that are adjacent to the properties on either side, you have a walkway, you have some landscaping buffer, you have some trees in that buffer, and you have, I believe, a distance of about 14-foot setback before you get to the building. And so the normal side yard setbacks in a conventional development is only 7 foot, and they're actually providing 14 feet. And you also have the prettiest side of the building facing towards the adjacent properties, which is the front door of the units. And so in trying to think practically what could be a problem, it might be lighting. You don't want lighting on the pathway, or maybe a porch light that's on the front door of the building that might glare out into the backyards of the adjacent properties. And they've done a very good job with the proposed pathway lighting. It's a low, very low Ballard type thing. It's not on poles or anything, and so that should really help. I'm not quite sure of the nature of the porch lighting, whether it's shielded so that it doesn't have the light trespass going across the property boundary. And maybe the applicant can help us address that issue to be sure that if somebody was in their backyard, sure, they can see the lights, but is it a glare? Is it actually glaring across the property boundary or not? And again, as I mentioned, we have few properties that have high-density zoning. This place does. That's what is allowed to develop. They really need to try to achieve that 14 units per acre. I mentioned that there's an air conditioning unit that faces the public street frontage along 3rd Avenue, and they propose some landscaping around that appears that certainly after it matures a little bit, that it will completely screen that unit from view. And I'm sure they're doing that because otherwise they'd have to put it around in the front patio area at the front door, the units. And the middle units apparently need to do that. This drawing is just too small. I don't know if you have one in your, but with 3 units in each of these buildings, these middle units do have a air conditioning unit out in their front patio. And I think this end unit probably has it around the side here, but it's not near a street frontage. But this one here needed the unit to be out here on the public street, and that's why they needed to landscape to shield its view. They could move it around and put it on the front patio. And I just wanted to point that out to you because I was having difficulty myself finding anything that was a negative on what was proposed here. I just think it's a really well-thought-out plan. It is a high-density plan, however, and so there's squeezing things into this site to make this happen, but one of the things they've done in addressing that is provided the 2 required parking spaces in double garages for each unit, and they've also added extra visitor parking, and/or if someone in the units has an extra car beyond the 2, you have some extra parking for that as well. If they should have units, as one of the letters that were submitted on this indicated, that if we have people buying these units that have more than 3 cars, and every one of them had 3 cars, you could have a problem in this development. And there certainly aren't probably going to be parking along 3rd or 4th, because those are one-way streets with parking only on one side, and it's a very limited amount of parking, and probably most of it's already taken up by the existing single-family homes in this neighborhood. And so I would think it's most likely going to be self-regulating when they see the available parking and how much there is. Probably people with 4 cars or 6 teenagers probably aren't going to lease or buy.
They meet the provisions of the code.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
it's not
So
for-
that's
okay.
basically the issue. Let's see if I have anything else. We talked about I wanted to mention the overall open space on this. Now, I'm forgetting whether it was 20-some percent.
Which code provision is that?
There's a requirement for 15% minimum for a planned unit development for a residential open space, and they have 20.
Okay.
And then they also indicate that their impervious surface of the entire site is only about 55%, and so that means that you also have a greater amount of green space beyond that 20% open space to the site. And so I think they're doing a good job there as well. The traffic study found that they couldn't meet the minimum spacing for their proposed driveway that goes through the site from existing driveways. There's a driveway across on the fairgrounds property. It's within 60 feet of this proposed driveway, and there's supposed to be 100-foot separation from existing driveways on both sides of the street. And there's another driveway on Fourth Avenue on the same side of the street that is about 75 feet away. And then on Third, there's a driveway on the opposite side of the street for an industry that's 170 feet wide. And so there's no way they can separate themselves 100 feet from that driveway. The traffic study recommended allowing that deviation because every property is allowed to have a means of access. And they've done the best they can